They said it was too late, that the best years were behind him. But he wasn't done. He was just getting dangerous. This podcast isn't for the overnight success stories. It's for the ones who are still in the middle of the damn fight. The late bloomers, the blue-collar visionaries, the people who refuse to settle. This isn't a comeback. It's a fucking uprising.
Welcome. Today I want to talk a little bit about the moment that caused me to change, overcoming the perfection trap, the aha moment that turned my passion into a tangible plan, and the lesson of asking better questions to overcome adversity. Welcome to Electrician Entrepreneur Podcast that is documenting or chronicling my journey from electrician to successful entrepreneur and philanthropist, really tackling all of the obstacles that come up from getting started all the way through that moment when the business truly takes a turn towards success and everything involved in that. My hope is really just to kind of, as I begin to show this, as I begin to get completely wide open and vulnerable for everyone to see, is that hopefully I inspire those that are in similar situations, regardless of age or position or whatever, to find your passion and find that which drives you to find some success in it and to find some kind of peace in your life, regardless of how much money that means or how much power you may encounter with it. This is all about figuring out how to go from a life where you're just not where you want to be to truly being where you want to be. So with all that said, I started this journey about a year and a half ago. The moment really kind of came to me that I needed to change, and the idea came, as the wheels began to spin. I found myself 3 weeks ago asking why I'm not getting anywhere. All I've been doing is I'm just planning, and something needs to happen. We need to really kind of make a big jump. So that's when I decided 3 weeks ago that's it. It's time to start putting the plans into action. There's no such thing as being ready. All the planning, you can do all the planning in the world, and what you find is that you just get stuck in this trap of constantly trying to get ready, and that just becomes an excuse to never make your next step, to take your next step, and to actually put things into action. So the idea came up that we were going to create this 90-day exit plan. And the 90-day exit plan was 90 days to become completely self-sufficient, where I wouldn't need the income from the current job that I have. And in doing so, in putting the plan together to execute and actually get out of this job that I have, I realized that 90 days is a little infeasible, really not feasible. The idea really kind of came up that, I was going to keep the title 90-day exit plan, but the reality is at the time that we started this, it was 23 weeks. We'll begin a new chapter in my life, and quit that job, have a sufficient enough income that I can do so and continue to survive, and then put all of my focus into creating this business. And so that created a series of milestones, each week being a new milestone. Milestone number 2 being my first episode of my podcast. And so that's where we're at right now, is milestone number 2. Milestone number 1 was a fantastic success. I managed to hit all my marks, get everything that I needed to get done. And then milestone number 2, when that began, a series of things started to happen that really kind of just really brought up all these issues that I needed to all these challenges that I needed to overcome. And so, um, you know, it's all kinds of things. First of all, I had some issues come up with my family, which pushed back. For the sake of sanity, I pushed back my milestone number 2 and the release of the first episode a week so that I could better prepare and also deal with the things happening within my personal life. And then, in addition to that, of course, I have to get all this new equipment to be able to produce the podcast. So this all comes in. One of the key items wasn't due to come in for an additional week, so that came in this past Wednesday. But there's yet another thing to push things back. So it's kind of good that we pushed things back because I wasn't going to be ready anyway. And then you know, in, and then when I get the stuff, nothing really works the way I thought it would. Nothing just goes together. It's just not, So, and then of course, in addition to all the technical issues, is just the sheer volume of things that I need to do in order to be prepared, in order to release this first episode and all that. So what I ended up finding out, what I ended up realizing, and the lesson that I ended up learning is that, first of all, I want everything to be perfect. There's this idea in my head that everything has to be perfect in order for me to gain any real success. And the fact of the matter is that you can't be measuring this based on success. Success is, of course, continue to grow momentum, but you have to keep success, the definition of what success is, in perspective. Your success is nailing each task as it comes along and overcoming any adversity that comes along with each task. So, realistically, while I'm trying to be perfect in getting all this together, I begin to become overwhelmed that each new struggle, each new issue that comes up, it's just pushing things further and further back, and this, motivation begins to suffer. Self-doubt begins to fall in. You begin to wonder if you're going to get anywhere with any of this stuff, if anybody's going to even care. And and then of course I'm working a second shift job in a facility that has no air conditioning, with the exception of a few rooms here and there. But overall, it's a production plant, and there's no air conditioning on the production floor, and health issues that I've been encountering over this past year, uh, you know, is really all that heat. Just I can't deal with it very well. So there's all these things have come up, and all these issues, and all these, and here's the thing: you have to just pull the trigger. Everything is every one of those things is an excuse to say I'm not ready. I need to wait. Being ready is an excuse to not move forward. So realistically, you just got to pull the fucking trigger. You just got to go. There's no way around it. You have to do it. So here's where the real win is, and here's where the real success comes up, is that, I realized, I should take some time off from work, instead of being focused on, oh my God, it's hot and I'm tired, I can't do this. Take a couple days. So I did. Took Thursday and Friday off so that I can better prepare myself. And really give up on the idea of being ready. You got to do it. Of course, I'm not ready. I mean, so the whole idea behind this podcast is for you to see that just how much struggle I'm going to go through. because you need to be realistic when you're making a big change in your life that you are going to struggle. So, so that really kind of brings us to where we are now. We have a minor business plan in place right now that mostly focuses on getting this podcast up and going. We've, I'm not ready to give my notice yet, but I will be giving them a notice. I actually had a conversation with them before about this, about, the idea that I would be leaving. And which is, the great thing that came out of that conversation is they said, give us as much notice as you want. They won't get rid of me. They'd rather keep me on until I've gotten through that entire notice, to better prepare the guy that would whoever that may be, that would eventually replace me. So they're very supportive of the idea that that I would be leaving. It's not like, well, screw you. You don't want to help us, screw you, go away. So, and then in addition to all of that, so I still haven't given the notice, but I plan to very shortly. And I think one of the reasons I haven't given the notice really comes down to the fact that, once I give the notice, that's it. I've committed myself completely, and it's hard to make that kind of commitment. So, because you don't know what's going to end up happening. And I've already just up and quit a job a year and a half ago. And what ended up happening, I had to get another job, 3, 4 or 5 months later, or whatever it was. I had to get up and get back to work. My initial plan failed. And so the upside here is that, that failure, of course, is in and of itself a lesson. So instead of saying to myself that I failed in a negative way, I can say, you know what, I failed, and here's the lesson I got from it. That was an awesome failure. I learned so much from going through all of that. So, and in and of all that stuff, I've also had a lot of wins this past couple of weeks, within my journaling, in being able to really kind of journaling and seeing all these things that I'm going through, and being able to really look back at what adversities that I've faced and how I've overcome them and everything else like that. And I just want to point out, it's very, very important that we, if you're going to make a big change like this and you're looking to become successful at anything, you really need to get in the habit of journaling. Journaling is the best way for you to really kind of analyze everything that you've gone through, understand how you can overcome all those things, and really kind of set up or really kind of develop what your pattern of thinking is, so that you can understand how it is that you react the way you do to certain situations, and so on and so forth. And I got to tell you that what I found to be the best platform for journaling, Mindsera.com. That's MINDSERA.com, is a fantastic application, online application that I use for journaling. They use AI to provide you with insights, provide you with your most typical patterns, and all kinds of other stuff. And it's a really, really, really fantastic tool. Now, I don't use this as an alternative to therapy. I use this in conjunction to therapy, because the combination of the two has really allowed me to start focusing on becoming emotionally intelligent. So I strongly urge that anybody watching this that may get the same, may feel that the same desire and the same overall need to make a big change in your lives, check them out. Check this tool out. It may not be for you, but you will thank me for at least checking it out and deciding that whether or not it fits for you. I truly, honestly believe this is a fantastic tool that will help you to delve into how you can overcome what it is that keeps you from moving forward on any particular issue. So let's kind of take a few steps back. I want to talk a little bit about and let you all know a little bit about, you know, how this started, where I was before, how this started, and how, and everything that it kind of puts me to where I sit in front of you today. So I was an electrician for 20 years. I would say I'm still an electrician. An electrician for 20 years. I spent a great portion of that with one particular electrical contractor. I was always in construction until recently. This last job I have is as a maintenance electrician. Um, it was something I truly loved doing. I love being an electrician. Not only did I love being an electrician, but I spent the greater portion of my career in leadership positions, such as foreman. I worked myself up from, one of the lead apprentices, got my license, became a foreman almost immediately, worked my way into the lead foreman position, and from that into a project manager position. Then the day came. I'd been going through a lot of emotional turmoil. I became a heavy, heavy, heavy drinker. um, and I began to ignore, things going on in my personal life because of how much drinking I was doing and because of the stresses from work and all that. I sacrificed my marriage to it all. And uh, as I was beginning to repair that relationship, um, which, by the way, just to be clear and to be honest, my wife and I did divorce, but we managed to patch it up afterwards, and we're back together. And thank God, because I mean, she's always been my biggest fan, and always my best support. Having somebody like that in your life is truly phenomenal. It's a great, she's just been great. She kept me moving even when I thought I couldn't. Um, and so you know, but I did lose that relationship. And then as I began to repair that, then a new issue came up, and another issue. And unfortunately I wasn't in a place to recognize that, I did have a whole lot of support, from the people I worked with, namely my boss, the owner of that company. So I gave up on that. I went to work for another contractor. If everything should have pointed to the fact that I was, you know, I was doing really well for myself, but it just wasn't right. So I quit. I just up and quit. And so the idea was, I'm going to quit this. I can't stand that. I have no control over my money, no control over my retirement funds. I mean, very little anyway. And I truly believe that, a lot of what was going on with my money was all, it was just a bunch of scams, um, where I get very little return, but everybody else seems to be getting rich off of me. And, I deeply felt this. So I thought, well, you know what, this is how I'm going to solve the problem. I'm going to solve two problems at once. I'm going to go into, the markets, and I'm going to make that my new life. And so I started taking up day trading, and it was within the day trading, actually. The idea was I was going to trade future contracts, trade future contracts on the S&P 500, the Nasdaq, gold, etc. And and through all that, I would be able to find myself in a position of financial freedom. And in the lessons that I followed to learn all this stuff, this gentleman that put this course together for me, um, or for other people rather, and it was all free, which is fantastic. But in all this, he put a lot of time and energy into not just how you trade, but how you transform your way of thinking and everything you do into creating a real business and becoming really successful. And in those lessons, I began to ask myself, what the hell is it that is, that all the most successful entrepreneurs on the planet have in common that nobody else seems to have figured out? Everyone I know, nobody has this stuff figured out. My whole life, nobody has ever really, with the exception of some psychobabble you hear about here and there, some self-help book that you might have come across, this, that, and the other thing. Ultimately, the reason why those things don't work is because you don't put enough confidence into them or faith into them, and so, but that was the question is, what are these people doing? And, here's what I came up with. What I came up with is that, every day you should be journaling. Every day you should be doing some kind of emotional check-in. They all work very hard at controlling, at having some kind of emotional intelligence. And all these things, by the way, I'll be talking about over the course of various different podcast episodes. But all these things, and I began to do a lot of research into how to do how I can start incorporating this stuff into my life. And it took a while before I started kind of, I had to go through a whole lot of rigmarole before I finally said to myself, before I started asking, how do I incorporate this? I understand that these are things that people do, and I understand what it is that, what it is that we're talking about. But how is it that I can get this into my own life? I mean, how do I practice this stuff? I just can't seem to get. And so then and this is when you begin to understand that it's, in asking these questions, not just to the world, but to yourself. Ask this to yourself. How do I start incorporating this? When you start asking yourself important questions like this, then you begin to understand, maybe you need help figuring it out. And that's okay. It's okay to ask for help. It's always okay to ask for help. If you're not asking for help, well, what the hell's wrong with you? You're just going to keep spinning your wheels. You don't need help with everything. But if you're bashful about asking for help on something that you really struggle at, guess what? You're not going to go anywhere. Ask for help. Ego is the biggest thing. And I think, it seems to be more the case in my generation, especially the men in my generation is like, I don't need any help. I can figure all this shit out on my own. And believe me, every day I freaking catch myself going, I can figure this out. I don't need somebody else telling me how to do this. No, I mean, maybe you can figure it out, but if you're really struggling to figure it out, fucking ask somebody. It's the best thing you'll ever do. So, here's the thing so now in figuring out that I need I need to start practicing and understanding how to take on all these habits that all these successful entrepreneurs have and everything. I begin to understand asking these questions started getting me to progress more and more and begin to really kind of come up with my why. So in trying to practice all these these new habits and figuring out these new habits, I begin to preach about them. Here's some real concrete ways in which you can accomplish these things. And, and so Julie, my wonderful wife, and partner, she's coming along on this journey with me, and I find myself preaching to her every day about the struggle, about the importance of the struggle, about the struggle and the journey. They're two of the same thing. It's the same thing. And so, just preaching all that stuff, and I begin to understand, it begins to dawn on me that one of the greatest things that I've always enjoyed about in my life, one of the things that drives me the hardest, is always been teaching others, lifting others up, trying to help other people. I actually this past week in my therapy session, my therapist says, you're an empath. You're a freaking empath, and you need to accept that that's the truth. And she's absolutely right. I hold a huge amount of empathy for others, and so you know this is where my passion comes from. Is I said to myself, when I get successful with all this money, um, you know, what am I going to do with this money? I want to create these passive incomes, and it doesn't even occur to me that this is about helping others. I says, what if I invest in local businesses? What if I invest in provide seed money to people to freaking to within my local community to grow their businesses and realize their dreams and bring their gigantic unique ideas to life. What if I do that and I provide as a seed money and I invest in them and then and it didn't even occur to me, until all this preaching was done that, well, that's, maybe I can also be a motivational speaker. Maybe I can also write books, that explain how people can, become successful and how they can change their mind to understand how to be successful. And um, so this really became this is what the journey started becoming about. And in through all this, right, I keep saying to myself, I'm going to seed all this stuff with my day trading money. I passed an evaluation account, and just to explain for those that don't know, you can get accounts through companies to provide you with the capital in order to trade. And so I have, but you have to go through an evaluation period, and then you get what's called a performance account. And then with your performance account, you kind of have to go through another evaluation period before you can actually start taking money out. I mean, you can take money out at any point, but you run the risk of closing your performance account. And so, at any rate, I started getting successful at that, and I managed to get a performance account. And then what did I do? I got cocky. I lost sight of where I was going and what I was trying to do. I just began to say, I'm winning, I'm winning, I'm winning, I'm winning. And that's, this is how the universe strikes, this is how the universe corrects you. Right? So I'm winning, I'm winning, I'm winning, and then I lose. Then I lose again. And then I start getting onto this rolling pattern of, okay, so I've got to make up for this, so I'm going to do this. And now you're changing your strategy. And now you're changing, and then eventually you begin to ignore your strategy altogether. You're just revenge trading, and you're just throwing your money away. And before you know it, your whole account's gone. And that's what happened. And I got into a major, major deep depression. And I began to ask myself, what am I doing this for? And so I took some time away from it, and I decided I needed to reset. And then I started asking better questions. What can I do differently? What am I missing? And is there more that I can do? And then it became clear. It's a mindset. At no point while I was winning those trades should I have lost my focus on what my ultimate goal was. At no point when I was winning those trades should I started making it about being good at winning trades. And because once it's inevitable, you can't win 100% when you're day trading. You can't. And I know this going into this, mind you. But thing is you have a series of successful trades and you lose sight of that fact, that it's inevitable that it's inevitable that what's going to end up happening is you're going to once you have that loss, you're going to have lost sight of what you're aiming at. You're going to have lost sight of the rules, which, the rules are you're going to lose. You have to accept that you're going to lose. You can't win all the time. You're going to lose. And sometimes you're going to win a series, and then you're going to lose a series. You see, you have to keep all that in mind. And that was really a hard thing. hard lesson learned. So when I started asking the questions, what can I do differently? What am I missing? And is there more that I can do? I began to ask those questions, and I began to understand that I needed to become more, I needed to understand what emotional intelligence is. And I had to figure out how I could become emotionally intelligent. And that's what led to, all the daily habits that I began to take on, emotional check-ins, and so on and so forth. And, you know, and I also began to understand that, while you can have a series of wins, that doesn't mean that you've gone from the marathon to a sprint. No, you're still in a marathon. Those series of wins, there's a very good chance that, after you win 4 wins, you're going to lose 2. If you've gotten 4 wins in a row, you're probably going to lose at least 2 in a row. There's a very good chance. Not to say that that's a given, but there's a very good chance that that's what's going to happen. And simply because this is you and the universe correcting, right? You can't always win. Can't. So this really kind of, all of this really kind of provided me with a lot of perspective. And huge. It was huge. And that's when I began to start doing things differently. I stopped putting so much focus on trading. I lost a couple of good habits that I had. I stopped logging my trades, which really, if you're a day trader, you really should log all your trades. So I plan on getting back into logging my trades. But, in addition to that, aside from that, rather, I began to really kind of do more research on where my main focuses are. And, and it was at that point that I began to realize that the podcast was a possibility. Initially, actually, the podcast was supposed to be, I was supposed to do some daily video logs to kind of build up a little momentum about, possible future speaking events, about the possibility, just build up some kind of momentum towards, possible books that I might write, and so on and so forth, and really kind of start creating this momentum towards going after my passion. And I began to build a business around this idea. After 1 year, I was hoping to, through one avenue or another, trading didn't need to be it. I mean, certainly I'm going to keep trying. But that didn't need to be it. It could be real estate development or investment. Investments in the market in general, which is a separate thing from day trading. So there's plenty of avenues in which I can begin to build some kind of wealth that I could build, that would be the foundation in which the rest of this would come together. And, so in working through all of this, I'm starting to have a business plan. I'm starting to and I'm preparing. I'm just preparing all this stuff, and it's just going around and around and around and around. And what ended up happening, what ends up happening is months go by, and I'm just planning a few things. First of all, everybody's got a different opinion of AI, and I think that's because it's still brand new, and people have a tendency to be afraid of things that they don't understand. Meanwhile, on the other side, there's a ton of people that absolutely adore and love AI for everything that it can provide. I hate to say it, but I'm one of those people. I don't hate to say it. AI has done a lot for me since I started actually putting plans together, since I started actually getting some real momentum. And, so that was one thing, is I began to embrace AI as a way to, as a tool to help me to start changing, making big changes in my life. So it's not just, creating a business plan, um, or mindless conversations with, something that really doesn't have any feeling, or any of that stuff. But it's, creating business plans, coming up with ideas, exploring ideas, um, not just journaling, not just emotional exploration either. There's some of that in there, certainly with the journaling that I do. But AI is really, in a sense, become a partner, um, that has absolutely no stake in what happens. Um, so it's, like I said, it's a tool. It's a tool that I use in order to make sure that I fully understand things, because it's certainly, I don't have to spend hours and hours and hours and hours searching through Google how to do this or how to do that, or what more I can learn about this thing or that thing. I can have full on conversations with an inanimate object and have it tell me everything that I otherwise would have spent hours trying to figure out. And it's a great tool in that way. But that was one thing, so that's one thing I was doing. Then I began to also notice that as I was stacking new habits every morning, these habits I was talking about earlier that, every successful entrepreneur does, and I don't mean just, not it, people like Joe Rogan even freaking talk about doing these things. Um, Denzel Washington, I love seeing him speak, from the heart, because he talks about doing these things. And so it kind of, it drives the importance of why all these people are doing these things, and all these successful people, why they're doing all these things. All the fact that these people are doing this proves that it works, and it's not some bullshit. It's not some bullshit thing you read in a self-help book somewhere, or some cliche that you read on the internet, or a cliche that you got in your freaking fortune cookie. It's none of that. It's really, these are real things that you can do that really work. And so stacking these habits, and it start every morning. I get up, and one of the first things I do after I make my coffee is I listen to motivational videos. I watch motivational videos. People, talking about what you got to do in order to be successful. And, there's short little clips anywhere from 30 to 60 seconds long. And, and it's all kinds of different people speaking, and, they just telling you exactly what they all tell you, the same shit. And that gets your blood flowing. And then after I'm done with that, I spend, a few minutes, just practicing gratitude. And that's something that I'll talk about at some point later down the road, practicing that gratitude. And then, of course, and then after that, I'll journal. I'll spend, anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes just journaling, depending on what my energy is like that morning. Some mornings I'm more tired than others. So I may only put 5 minutes worth of my thoughts down on in my journal. Or some days I'll spend 30 minutes just, a complete mental expulsion. And so, again, I'm going to bring this right back. This is, the fantastic thing about that last thing that I'm doing, that last habit that I do every morning, that journaling, is then I can say, I can go deeper. There's a nice little button in Mindsera. And again, I want to point this out. It's MINDSERA.com. Fantastic journaling application. And they have, when you journal, then they've got this button there that says, go deeper. And it will analyze everything you've written already. And then it'll kind of give you an insight as to what that emotion is that you're displaying in your thoughts, and so on. And then they ask you a really pertinent question that, if you sit and think about it, and you really do have to think about it, but if you sit and think about it, you go, Holy shit, I didn't think of it that way. Well, this is the importance of this is what makes this so great. And you can do that, you answer that, and you can just keep going. You want to explore that right down to the root. Just keep clicking on that go deeper button. Mindsera.com, MINDSERA.com. Believe me, you will thank me. You'll thank me for pointing this application out to you. Now, so in all that I've been doing for the last year and a half, when I began to realize what my purpose was, which is, we tend to refer this to your why. What's your why? Why are you doing this? That's your purpose, right? And in finding, and it's not just your purpose. This is what you're passionate about. It's your purpose because you're passionate about doing it, or about achieving it, or whatever. This passion, right? And there's a reason why I say this is you're passionate about it, because it lights a freaking fire under you. And I'm telling you, this is from my experience. This is what I've been experiencing. I want so badly, because I'm an empath, because I discovered that my why, or my purpose, is to lift other people up and show them that they can become successful, just like I plan on being. I want to bring people with me on this journey. That's why I'm doing this podcast. I'm not doing this, because it sounds like it's for you, like I'm doing it for you, whoever's watching this or listening. It sounds like I'm doing this, but I'm not. I'm doing this for me because I want you with me. You understand? I want you to see this. I want to see in your success, I will feel some success in your ability to climb out of whatever hole you may be finding yourself in, or whatever struggle you're having, or whatever that is. That's what I'm passionate about, is seeing you come out of that. And I want to point out that success is not measured by what other people think. It's about your satisfaction in whatever it is you're doing. You are successful when you are truly satisfied with what you've done. Success is measured by how you feel when no one else is watching. And, so that success, this is what I'm passionate about, is seeing other people become successful. And, and so this lights a fire that creates this momentum, and this momentum, right? This fire that drives me forward, that's driving me to do what I'm doing, that's driving me towards finding this success. I want money. Of course, I want money. I want money so that I don't have to worry about paying the bills, so that I don't have to worry about taking a vacation. And going to the campground. I love going to the campground. I go to the campground, or I try to go to the campground 2, 3, maybe even 4 times a year for a few days, or up to a week, or whatever. I love I love going on cruises. I can't do those things with my current income, not to the degree that I want to do them. So yeah, there is some motivation there with that, but the truth of the matter is that I would always be struggling to make that work if I wasn't doing what I was passionate about, and no, I'm not at that point yet. That's the whole point of this, really, to show you that I'm not at that point yet, but I will be someday, right? And that's why I'm fired up to freaking have this conversation with you, to be able to do this podcast, and for to bring you along. I want to inspire you to understand. I want my pain to help lift you up. And, and I want my pain to teach you that your pain is part of the process. Your struggle is part of the process. I'm struggling right now, but you know what? I've one of the biggest lessons I learned was that it is the struggle. that makes the journey. It is the journey that we live our lives. It's not the destination. When you begin to understand that when you get to the end of when you get to that destination, that there is another destination beyond that one, and then another one after that one, up until the day you die, you begin to understand that it is not the destination that you need to concern yourself with. It is the struggle that you are dealing with right now. And it is that is the journey. It's the journey. This wonderful woman by the name of Mel Robbins says on one of her appearances or on her podcast, she says, the funny thing about going on a hike is, and I love this. The funny thing about going on a hike is it's not about the top of the mountain. It's about being on the trail. And I love that. That's a freaking fantastic thing. It's not, when you get to the top of the mountain, it's over. Who cares? You're done. Okay, it's time to go home. You know what I mean? But you're on the trail. That's when you find your joy. That's when you find your peace, is during that hike. Yeah, it's great to be able to look around from the top of the mountain, but then it's time to go home. It's over. What now? Well, all right, back to reality. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've been on a hike and that's what I said. Oh yeah, all right, we got here. Well, it's time to go home, go back to reality. Reality should have been what's happening on the trail, right? Isn't that the point? So at any rate, and I want to talk a little bit about, one of the biggest struggles that I have. Okay, I have a little bit of an OCD. I mean, this is self-diagnosed, but a little bit of an OCD where to present myself to others and to try to do things like this podcast and everything, one of the things that this almost didn't happen, right? What took so long for me to start this freaking 90-day exit plan was that I kept trying to make things perfect. And now I start the 90-day exit plan. In my first podcast, I'm worrying. I want my first episode to be perfect. There's no such thing as perfection. Perfection is a construct. Perfection is an excuse. It's an excuse because, the reality is that the more you try for perfection, the more you will find imperfections. It's kind of, there's kind of something Taoistic about that, right? The harder you try for happiness, the more you will find despair. The harder you try for perfection, the more you're going to find it's imperfect. So instead, reframe it and see that perfection see perfection for what it is. It's an excuse for not taking action. It's not perfect, not ready. It's just not fucking ready yet. So we're not going to move forward. We got to wait until we're ready. Well, how the fuck do we know when we're ready? Right? Because no matter how ready you are, you're still thinking, I'm not ready yet. You keep aiming for ready. I mean, it's subjective, right? So, that's the perfection trap. It's a trap. It really is a trap. You just go around in circles over and over and over again. Okay, I took care of that, but this fucking thing, now I'm having trouble with this thing. Now I'm having trouble with that. So I'll just, just as an example, so I had to get a light so I got to start off. I'm low budget, right? I have no money. So a low budget. I'm going to use my phone as a camera, but I do want a microphone. So I got to get a microphone. I'm going to get a microphone. I need a boom arm. So I get a microphone. I got a boom arm, right? But now when I choose the microphone, I prefer, because there's a really good point made in some of the tutorials on podcasting. Really good point made for the XLR microphones. XLR is a technology that has been around for, I think, 50 years or something like that. And this has never changed. And it still provides a massively good quality sound from your microphone. And, or you could go with USB, right? And I says, no, I'm gonna go with XLR. Well, the issue with XLR is that, of course, you don't have XLR on your laptop, so you need an audio interface. So I got to get the audio interface. Okay, so here's what I got coming. I got a freaking microphone coming. I got the boom arm coming. I've got a freaking, XLR cable coming, and then I got my audio interface coming. But the audio interface, that's a week out. Okay, all right, so it's not perfect. That's not perfect. That's not great. So finally, so now a week goes by, audio interface comes in. The audio interface and the camera won't work at the same time. Why? Because the fucking laptop is all out of power for USB. So now I need an AC powered, a separately powered USB hub in order to be able to plug in my freaking interface so that my camera can work at the same time. So I do that and I get that situated. And then then I can't figure out how to get the freaking podcast software to work. So I figured that out. Then I need now I need an intro, right? Which, by the way, I love that intro. But I got to get an intro. So I get the intro. Now I need a video to cover up the freaking intro. Because, for 30 seconds, I'm not doing nothing but looking around. And you don't want to see that. I don't want to see that. I know I don't want to see that. It just goes on and on and on and on. It's not perfect. I want it to be perfect. Why? I can't soundproof the freaking room. I don't have it in my budget. So it's definitely not perfect. You know what perfection is? Perfection is exactly the way it is right now. Right? It's exactly the way it is right now, because how the hell are you going to believe, if you don't know me, how are you going to believe that I'm starting out from shit, from nothing? You know what I mean? Let's say 60, 70 freaking podcast episodes in, you're seeing me for the first time. You decide to check out, whoa, where did he start from? He says he documented the whole damn thing. Let me go back and look. And the first episode, you go back to look at the first episode, and the first episode's perfect. You going to believe that I wasn't already successful? At least that's kind of the idea here, right? So, at any rate, perfection's got to be what it's got to be. Otherwise, you're never going to pull the trigger. If you're constantly looking for perfection before you start, then you're never going to fucking start. And that's the lesson I learned. And you got to ask for help. If you need something done and you're having trouble doing it, fucking ask for help. So, there's all kinds of things, all kinds of things that you can make an excuse for. But if you, that really is the trap. And that's what keeps you from moving. And that's what's going to keep anybody, if you've never known success in your life, it's because you keep making excuses not to take action. Take fucking action. Do yourself the favor. Do it for you. At the end of the day, it's all about you. You're never going to be happy unless you do it for you. If you're doing it for somebody else, you're never going to be successful. So, do yourself a favor. Start stacking habits in the morning. All right? Start writing all this stuff down, all these things that you're trying to figure out. Write them all down on a piece of paper or in a book or on, I don't know. How about mindsarah.com? Check them out. I really want to thank them for potentially sponsoring this podcast. The truth of the matter is, I'm doing this. I'm sponsoring them without their permission right now. It's kind of as a, good faith gesture, but it's because I'm passionate about what they do. So I'm going to thank them ahead of time for at least entertaining the possibility of partnering up. So I want to recap a little bit, just kind of go over where we're at, what we talked about today. It's important that you figure out what your passion is. If you're ever looking to be successful in anything, you will never truly feel peace unless you are successful with what you're passionate about. Don't settle for anything less than what you're passionate about, because you're going to constantly ask yourself, well, what the hell? Why is the world such a bad place? Why is this? Why is that? It's not. It's just the way you're perceiving it, because you're not happy, because you haven't found peace. Figure out what you're passionate about. Figure out what your why is, and then go find that peace. When you figure out what you're passionate about, trust me, you won't quit. I don't know if you've ever quit anything in your life, but I promise you this: you figure out what you're passionate about, and you won't quit until you get it. That's how you know you're passionate about it. It's natural to feel doubts. It's natural to get knocked down. It's natural to struggle. But the difference is that you're going to do it anyway, right? Figure out what you're passionate about. Figure out what your why is. I hope that everything that I talked about in this episode, and I hope that with everything that I talk about in my future podcast episodes, I hope that you find some inspiration. I hope that you find something useful out of them. I really hope that you do join me on this journey towards success and this journey to finding true peace. You can do this. I know you can, because I will. And if I can do it, you can do it. None of us are stuck. And I want to point out too, I'm 50 years old. It's never too fucking late. Okay. I don't care if you're 65. Okay. You still breathing? Go find what you're passionate about. For Christ's sake, some people, they're just passionate about fishing. That's their passion. So they're going to go to the stream every weekend and go freaking fishing. That's okay. Passion doesn't necessarily mean rich and powerful, right? Passion is what makes you truly happy and peaceful. So make sure to find your passion. Now I want to talk a little bit about my next week. We're going to do this. I'm going to record this podcast every Sunday and hopefully have it released by Monday morning. So that's what my goal is. That's what my aim is. So next week I want to talk to you guys. I want to talk a bit about the importance of asking for help and having a partner to help you to help you to realize, having support network. Basically, it's always, not everybody has that, but we're going to dive deep into what my experiences are with that next week on my next episode. And I really hope that that you enjoyed this one, and that you will join me going forward and continue to go forward. And please, this is starting out. Let other people know about this podcast. Share this podcast with as many people as you can. I really, the more exposure I get, the more people that I hopefully can touch and lift up. And I would really appreciate that. So, again, thank you all for tuning in and giving me a listen. We'll see you next week. Thank you.